Hello to those who have joined us bang on 1 o'clock to start our meeting about sustainability in agriculture in the Yarra Valley. This is our launch of our project called Project Ag Resilience. And the purpose of running this meeting is to get everyone on board with understanding the terminology about sustainability, about climate resilience, about ESG, and about all of the things that we're going to need to do in the future. And we've brought along our guest presenters, Angela and Scott. They're going to help us devise ways of looking at our ESG reporting and making it easy for us. We're even going to look at ways that we can use that information to make our farms more profitable and more productive, as well as more environmentally sustainable. So first up, I'm going to start with a little bit of an introduction to our project. Sorry, this is our first time running this, so I just need to be able to start the slideshow and double check that you guys can see this. And everyone see the slideshow.
Can't see it yet.
Okay, probably just loading up.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you very much. I'm really not sure what you guys can see, so I'm going to rely on your feedback here. So our project is sponsored by effectively Melbourne Water. They get a grant from the Australian government, and I'll explain that connection in our next slide. So our project fits in with the Melbourne Water crew. They used to be called the Port Phillip and Western Port Catchment Management Authority. So they're now run by Melbourne Water, and their funding is coming through from the Australian government, and it's all related to helping be more climate resilient with our agriculture and effectively reducing our emissions and making agriculture more sustainable. So we still keep in touch with Karen Thomas. Many of you know her, the Sustainable Agriculture Facilitator. So we are in very good hands. So Project Ag Resilience came about because we appreciate that growing things in this agricultural and horticultural space is only getting harder and harder. We have climate extremes to deal with, so we have hotter hots, we have longer dry periods, we have wetter wets, and we actually have been experiencing in the Yarra Valley some more severe storms. We've potentially got reduced water to grow the same or more crop. We are reducing our arable land, so if we're not looking after it, it won't be there for us in the future. My grandfather's always said to me, it's the one thing that we're not making any more of. So we need to make sure we are looking after that. We're definitely in a climate where, an economic climate as well, where we're going to have the lack of ability to use as many resources as what we once have. So the reduced resources issue is actually real. There are different market pressures that we need to aim to please, or we need to find alternative strategies around. So one of these strategies is the mandated ESG. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of the ESG before, it's a framework used to measure a company's sustainability and ethical impact, and it's been mandatory in Australia since February 2025. It started being more adopted and forcefully put onto some of the larger companies first, but in the end it is going to come back down to us small agricultural producers in the Yarra Valley. So the E in the ESG is the environmental part. The S and the G is social and governance. Now the E, it focuses on a company's impact in the natural world. So that's where we're going to rely on Scott and Angela to tell us about how we're going to address that. So our speakers today, we're going to introduce Dave Eastham, and he's the Agribusiness Yarra Valley Vice Chair. He's very passionate about sustainable productivity. He has some experience in biosecurity. Biodiversity and that natural world is definitely his other passion. We're going to hear from Scott, who works and has developed the Hort360 program, and we're going to hear from Angela, who's a familiar face to people with the Freshcare QA programs. And Angela's going to speak to us about the Freshcare environmental program. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to wrap this up with how this particular project is going to help you as a farmer in the Yarra Valley meet your requirements, work on productivity, and develop an environmental stewardship plan. So we are here to help. We need to look for these efficiencies in the data capture and across all of the programs, because we don't necessarily need to go and measure it again. And as a friend of mine has said to me just recently, measure once and use it often. We really do need to look at productivity and profitability out of this so we can justify making all this extra work. So right now, I'm going to stop sharing this particular presentation, and I'm going to introduce a recording of Dave Eastham's introduction for us. So bear with me for just 1 second. And everyone see Dave? All good. I'll start Dave off. See how we go. Thanks, Dave, for those wise words. I'm sure when you watch this back, you'll hear our gratitude. It's really good to have such passion and such a high rate of thinking guiding us with this project into the next few years. So what I would like to do now is just bring us back to the why. I just want to show 3 quick slides, 3 quick pictures so that we can position ourselves and understand where we're coming from. So I'm going to go back to my slide deck. See how we go with this transition. I might nail it in the end. Can everyone see the Australian Agricultural Sustainability Framework? Cool. So the Australian Agricultural Sustainability Framework is essentially where we're driving our E, our S, and our G from. So we have our environmental in the green, and we have our governance and social in the blue and the yellow. So anyone that wants to go and look at the roots of where we're driving our planning from, this is where it is. Horticulture's grabbed this as well and made it slightly more specific to the horticulture industry. So they've got their own sustainability framework, and it is very much respectful of productivity, profitability, and that means people staying in business because people in business can care for the land. And I'm going to struggle to see the next screen. Inside the horticultural sustainability framework, we're going to concentrate on the environmental side. So that's the E. So now that we know where we're aiming, I'm going to stop my sharing and hand over to Scott, who's going to teach us about Hort360 and about where that product can help us as a very viable and practical, useful tool. So Scott, I'll let you load up and start presenting.
Okay. Hi to everyone online. So my name's Scott Wallace and I work for what is Queensland Fruit and Vegetable Growers. And I'm based in Toowoomba. For probably last 20 odd years, worked with horticulture growers, particularly around on-farm practices and operations. And over that time, we've developed what is Hort360. So that's been around since 2007. So I'll briefly go through a bit of Hort360 and then we'll get on to Hort ESG. Very much an overview. This is a snapshot of slides that I presented to the Hort Innovation Network a few weeks ago. But we do have a Hort360 website and some info on that website about Hort ESG as well. Anyway, that's me. Feel free to contact me afterwards. Quite happy to answer any questions, etc. And see if we can break this. So, Hort360 is essentially a risk assessment tool that we use for benchmarking. And whilst we might talk about environment in this context, Hort360 is broader than just environment. So we include other aspects of business operations that will become a bit clearer in a minute. So we have a whole farm business approach, and Hort360 aligns with various outcomes and needs that growers may find that they need to do multiple times. It's sort of the one-stop shop to try and do something once and go out from there. And so we align with a lot of other mechanisms, and I'll explain that in a sec. So currently, Hort360 has these as primary module topics. And you'll see that, yes, there are a bunch of environmental related modules, so biodiversity and soil, plants and nutrients, etc. But we also have things like the Better Business module and a workplace health and safety module, etc., and a climate module. And at the moment, nationally, a bit over 1,100 horticulture businesses use Hort360, and across 148,000 plus hectares. So it's been well used. A lot of that data is out of Queensland, but we do have growers across South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, Tasmania, and a couple over in WA. Where do we fit? So as a tool, as a benchmarking tool, we also align with the framework that Bronwyn just presented, the AASF framework. We align and provide data to the Hort sustainability framework. We align with Freshcare Environmental and Kraft Heinz, etc. Hort360 underpins the peer-to-peer component of Hort ESG, and I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. And we also support other industry commodities. So Farmers Australia have a version of Hort360 that they deliver to their growers across South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, and we have a platform for turf in Queensland, and Berries Australia use Hort360, and we also have a partnership with Cyro at the moment. And we're continually speaking to others about coming on board with Hort360, either as a very specific product, like an Almonds Australia product, or like this arrangement, whereby growers will get access directly to Hort360 and Bronwyn will be there to assist. And if you ever need to give me a ring, just give me a ring. And sometimes I even come to Victoria. Just in a data point of view, so QFEG, we operate with appropriate privacy policies. Data is held in an Amazon account, and we have an IT provider that helps us with structure and systems. ESG, so Hort ESG. We launched Hort ESG a bit over 12 months ago at Hort Connections, 2024. And over that, since then, we have tweaked it and made some changes to it, and we have pilot growers going through the process. What's happened? It's going to do that dodgy shift. But it is a viable product that growers can access, and you can access it via a Hort360 account. So strategic enabler helps growers meet market ready, equips the supply chain with credible data, builds resilience, reputation across the Hort sector, and trying to keep it smart sector specific and trying to keep it simple whilst also providing the necessary outcomes that are being sought through the supply chain. So like David said, David actually gave quite a good summary. ESG is emerging. At the moment, the top tier companies are having to do climate-related reporting. That'll start to filter through the supply chain over the next 1 or 2 years. And as that need grows, you will have, say, a supermarket chain will start asking growers through the supply chain for emissions data, perhaps, or something else. And we are quite aware that growers, particularly direct growers, are being asked for sustainability reports and have been for about 12 months. Not all directs, just some. There's not a good structure out there domestically. From an international context, we are seeing good sustainability report structures being presented. And so Hort360, we've purposely put it in a position where it provides that structure. And it aligns with not just what is seen as a need domestically, but also internationally. So we're using the Global Reporting Initiative as the standard, and that forms our structure. And we're also going through a licensing process with them. So that gives us our international context. Yesterday, I was actually in a workshop specifically about ESG, and from an investor point of view, the investors are going to ask growers these questions about, do you understand risk? Do you invest in people? Is your business agile? And so understanding risk is what Hort360 does, fulfills that element. Being agile, so is your business agile at shifting at either in a people sense or a business, navigating new ventures, trying to manage impact. So if you're impacted by climate, how agile is your business in trying to address that? Structurally, Hort360, we are seeking 4 key elements. So in a template structure, growers are going to be asked for a statement around current management and then intent. They're going to be asked about some data, where data is appropriate, and if they have completed the relevant Hort360 module, the data comes across as a little gauge like that. And its intent is to demonstrate where the grower is against everyone else. So how do they perform amongst the industry? And we put in the alignment with UN SDGs. So they're relevant for every section. It's interesting in an ag context, we actually align with all 17 SDGs, and not many other industries actually do that. So for ag, it potentially is complex, but we're trying to take the complexity out of the process.
Mm.
This is a sort of output. So we have an inbuilt greenhouse gas calculator. It is based on the Hort Carbon Info calculator developed out of Queensland DPI and HGAF. So HGAF developed out of Melbourne Uni. So we've combined the two. And so growers will enter the data and it'll run the calculation, and we'll get a graphic output as well as a set of data output. In this instance, we've done the energy module to get the gauge, and that's the SDG alignment. So what we're trying to do, or what we have done, is whilst growers will put in lots of data, we don't present that data in a raw sense. We present it graphically. Yeah. And so the other example I've got is pesticide stuff. So we're not necessarily interested in all the pesticides growers use, but just some in particular. And in this sense, the pesticide list we have in the system at the moment has a human health hazard rating. And at the moment, we're looking at a couple of other IPM-related risks that we can put in as well. So we're also sort of looking for other things that we can add, how we can add value into what growers are presenting. And this is our alignment onion. So grow in the middle, Hort360. Pure Fiji also administers Fair Farms. So Fair Farms fulfills the social element in ESG. So if you're a fair farmer, you can click in the social bit that essentially you're a fair farmer, and the S section is pretty much completed there and then. And we are looking at other API linkages that we can try and bring data across from, say, an ag world or something that'll help growers complete the information required. So Hort Sustainability Framework, the Ag Sustainability Framework, the UN SDGs, and the Global Reporting Initiative. We also align with the Farm System Assessment out of the UK and a few other things. The onion gets a bit big if we start adding too much. Get to the next slide. So for a grower, so it provides a practical tool. For industry, hey, Hort360 has a herd of data in it. It allows us to do all sorts of stuff. So either at a individual level, with providing growers with technical support, through to at an industry level or a commodity level where we can see common risk, and then we can implement actions against common risk. For Queensland, Hort360 has been really valuable in pushing it back against reef regulations. So having the data enables you to take a position. Without data, you don't have a position. Yeah. For ESG, we'll build on the data. That'll give us an opportunity to talk back to industry, especially for emissions. So emissions data for horticulture is pretty thin on the ground. We have some numbers, but the more we can get growers involved in the ESG and doing the emissions calculation, the more we can build up that baseline data. And for growers, you want to be involved because eventually someone's going to ask, what is your position? And there was a comment yesterday in the meeting about the materiality assessments that the supply chain will start to do in the next 5 years and how that potentially influences back down the supply chain. All right, thank you.
Thanks very much, Scott. It's a wealth of information. It's the second time I've been able to see that presentation, and I think I understand it a little bit more every time I watch it. I can personally vouch for the ease of use of Hort360. I signed our business up for that and have had a crack at a couple of the modules, and I was pleasantly surprised at how easy and non-confrontational it was. I was able to do a lot of it just off the top of my head. Obviously, if I want to take it further, I'm going to have to go and crunch some numbers. But yeah, well done on a very grower-friendly product.
All right, thank you.
So now we're going to have Angela from Freshcare. And I've actually used a lot of the Freshcare information for the environmental side of things that's available online, so that I've been able to learn about what's ahead of us and how it aligns with all of the other things. And I think that's the key from today, is looking at where our data capture aligns. And as a colleague said to me, measure it once and use it often. So taking messages from Scott's presentation and leading into Freshcare, it really is about compatibility of our data collection and about making it work for us. So without any further ado, I'll get Angela to upload her presentation and start presenting. And we'll have questions for both Scott and Angela after Angela's finished, because I'm sure we'll have raised some. Okay, let me just get my screens happening. I think I'm sharing that effectively. Okay, I think that's good. You'll let me know, Bronwyn, if I'm not sharing.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, great. Anyway, thank you for inviting me along, and it is great to follow Scott's presentation, because I think it's worth flagging that any of those records and things that are being kept for one program should be able to be used and adopted for many. So I'm here to talk about Freshcare, and I'm going to provide an overview, I guess, of the suite of the Freshcare assurance programs that we have available to both hort and viticulture producers, as well as the horticulture supply chain and wineries. Freshcare has been around for 25 years. It was established back in the late 90s as a quality assurance program to, I guess, reduce what was being seen at the time as many systems coming in, and it was the need for an established Australian-based program to address, the international standards and programs that were coming in. So it was created by a network of industry experts at the time, growers and representatives of DPI and things across the country. So Freshcare now, over the 25 years, we now have over 4,000 participating businesses or certificates held across the country. We have 5 standards, so developed from our original food safety and quality standards. We now have 5 across industry. We've remained I guess, under the governance structure of 30 peak industry bodies or owner members of Freshcare, so the likes of some of those peaks that Scott mentioned, including Queensland Fruit and Vegetable Growers, Berries Australia, AusVeg, 30 of those organisations under the banner are part of our structure. We also deliver our programs through a network of trainers that operate nationally. We have some of our modules of training available via e-learning. And then Freshcare being an assurance program or certification program, we have seven certification bodies that can deliver those third-party audits if and when certification of the program is required, and they manage that network of auditors across the country, of which there's over 60 throughout the regions. So mentioning
the Freshcare standards. Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water. I am recovering from the flu, so. So Freshcare, as you may be aware if you've heard of Freshcare, the predominant use of our standard is the Food Safety and Quality Standard, and that is the original or the foundation standard that we offered. That is now in its version 4.2, but currently under review. So we will have a launch of a new and updated version of our Food Safety and Quality Standard coming out likely early next year. The supply chain standard is the food safety and quality equivalent for everything post-farm gate. So those standalone packing operations or wholesalers and other businesses within the supply chain can adopt the food safety and quality management system through the supply chain standard. Then we refer to Freshcare Environmental, which is what I'll focus a bit on today. And also if there's producers that are specifically wine grape growers supplying into to wineries or looking to join Sustainable Wine Growing Australia, Freshcare provides the underpinning standards for that program. So that's the Australian Wine Industry Standards of Sustainable Practice for Viticulture and Winery. So starting off just with a little bit, again, of our foundation standard and a deep dive into some of the criteria that is asked for those growers that adopt this standard. And it's really, I just wanted to flag the overlap. So excuse me, when we talk about ESG, when we talk about environmental management practices and best practice, fundamentally, for supply of food products, you will be required to have a food safety management system of some sort, whether that's HACCP, whether that's Freshcare, or whether that's something else that the supply chain is asking you for. There are a number of criteria and records, and as Bron mentioned, you know, if you are recording something, record it once and use it for as many applications as you can. So just wanted to highlight here that within the Freshcare Food Safety and Quality program that some of you may already have, the management elements, they're looking at, you know, some of those governance criteria which will come out as part of ESG reporting. The food safety and quality elements, you know, the use of chemicals, fertilizers and soil additives, water, even traceability and the recording of pests, animal and pest management and things like that will all apply within any environmental management system. So if you are keeping records from a food safety management perspective, use those. Use that as your base and your starting point. So from a Freshcare environmental perspective, our environmental program provides you with an auditable option for an environmental management system. So what Scott has outlined is you could adopt through Hort360 if and when there was a requirement for you to want to make claims about certification, and I think there is various certification pathways, but Freshcare Environmental provides a third-party audited certification option. So it is a full environmental management system. It looks at environmental action planning, so a review of the business's practices, and provides guidance on how to adopt those best practice or good practices and then improve on those through a continuous improvement cycle. Wanted to highlight there that the management elements obviously across the Freshcare standards align. So if you are adopting one, there isn't an expectation to duplicate that process. Let's just keep that record and extend the scope from food safety to include your environmental and yeah, build that pathway from there. And again, those key components and areas, as Bronwyn had flagged, they all align to the Ag Sustain and Hort sustainability frameworks of the key and core elements from an environmental management perspective that we can focus on to improve efficiencies, productivity, and gain some outcomes for the business. So just I guess lastly, just to highlight the sustainability viticulture and winery standards, they producers that are certified to these standards, it does actually enable them to use the Sustainable Wine Growing Australia Trust Mark. So that's just one of those, I guess, market drivers that the wine industry have adopted. That trust mark can be used on wine bottles as a means of making claims or statements around that certification. And so just briefly from a Freshcare implementation perspective, if you were to go through and looking to gain certification, there's 4 steps involved in that, and that's not necessarily a quick process just because it's 4. But obviously there's the sign up, the train and implement. We feel that it's very important that growers gain an ownership of an understanding of the requirements. So you know, whether that's training through Freshcare or training and use of other tools that can be adopted and used for Freshcare certification down the track, it needs to be owned, we believe, by the business in order to receive and achieve the best outcomes. Audits are required to achieve certification. So the model that Freshcare has is annual audits for our food safety and quality and environmental programs, and there's a triennial audit cycle for the sustainability programs for the wine industry. They are all conducted by third-party assessors, so not by Freshcare, but by the appointed certification bodies. Once a business has achieved certification, they receive a certificate and they gain access to, you know, other materials that they can use to promote that certification. And similarly, in the instance of the wine industry, they could then apply to use the trust mark as a endorsement on their product. And so I guess lastly, from a why you might consider Freshcare or why this is important, not just from a Freshcare perspective, adopting any of these practices, but for Freshcare certification. And we've done lots of work and promotion in ensuring that our, you know, certificates of certification are recognised through multiple streams. So not just with the major Australian retailers and HARPS, so Freshcare is obviously a base scheme that's recognised under HARPS, but in export markets. So our food safety and quality programs are both benchmarked to the Global Food Safety Initiative that enables you know, export market access. We have also, there's components of the standards obviously that align with government and regulatory requirements, but we have also achieved specific government endorsement. So any producers in Victoria that may be berries, leafy greens or melons, the Freshcare Food Safety and Quality Standard is recognised under the new PPP, Primary Production and Processing Standards, as aligned. So you could use or utilise your Freshcare certification as a means of reducing the compliance activities that will occur. Freshcare Environmental is also a recognised program under the Office of the Great Barrier Reef for banana producers. They are regulated in reef catchments, so we've gained that recognition there. Obviously, the other recognition is just through supply chain partners. So you may have, you know, certain suppliers that are requesting evidence of whether it's food safety, environmental practice, those types of things. It can be used to meet that criteria. So that was my very brief overview of what Freshcare offers and alignment. But I think the key component there is that the criteria around environmental sustainability and ESG is clear, and I think that regardless of the pathway or the adoption practices you choose to start recording that, it's really just about start recording that and capturing that data, as Scott mentioned, because if you've got it, we can use it in many different ways to achieve what those future reporting requirements are likely to be. So yeah, if you would want to reach out to Freshcare, there's our contact details. I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, how to stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Angela. So
That's
what
okay.
we've seen from both Scott and Angela is two very similar systems, but they have different horses for different courses, but they are harmonised. And we, as a grower group in the Yarra Valley, need to work out what we're going to do with these tools and how we're going to get them to help us. So, is there any questions coming through in the chat? I'm going to try and switch over to that just so that we can direct them to Scott and Angela while we are fresh. And whilst we're answering those questions, if there's any coming through, I will pull it all together and showcase where Agribusiness Yarra Valley is going to take this project using these tools. So no questions in the chat so far. So that must mean your presentations were received loud and clear. So I'll switch back to my summary and we'll see how we go. So I will catch that any minute now. Sorry, I've just lost Teams. We'll get this one. Scott, could you speak to some of the learnings you took away from the recent Berry Hort360 project in New South Wales? So while you're answering that, I will try and play around with the screen in my next presentation. Thanks, Scott.
Okay. Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, we've had a sort of a 3-year project with berries in Northern Rivers. Worked reasonably well. They've used Hort360 as it is. They did a lot of early work around irrigation management for berries, which we provided some input into that. There's some good data there to have a look at. It probably hasn't been analysed that much. Recently, well, we're coming to the end of that project, but what we have done is work with berries to develop what is a berry submodule. So in Hort360, whilst I showed you all of the primary modules, for project purposes, what we do is develop what we call submodules. And so there is now a berry submodule available. And so it is a discrete group of questions that Berries Australia have identified out of all of the primary modules, a set of questions that they are wanting to ask berry growers in particular. And so we've loaded that up, and Berries Australia now have the opportunity to go now and retrospectively put some grower responses in against that question framework, as well as then deliver it to others. And then we can have a look at what that data is telling us for berry growers in that region. So it'll be good.
Yeah, so you've got a real focus there on community and feedback mechanisms whilst protecting people's data and their privacy. We can still stimulate that discussion that's needed to then create the action plans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so in the Yarra Valley, we're going to make this work. I've spoken to lots of growers and they're like, ESG, nah, I'm done, I'm out, I'm not going to do it. Like, all right, well, when you decide to do it, come back. Agribusiness Yarra Valley is here to help because whether we want it or not, it's coming. So let's make this work for us. Let's make this help us with our productivity and our profitability and our longevity in farming. Saw a quote the other day, the tail doesn't wag the dog. Now, it might be a bit brutal and a bit far-fetched, but I really want to emphasise that we need to make this work for us. We need to get this data. We need to use it to set a standard of our own. And then we can look greater into those standards, as Scott was saying, as a community. So how can we best use this information? Tick the ESG box at the end of the day if you want to do that. That's great. But in the meantime, let's look at how we're going to preserve our soil and land, how we're going to make our crops more resilient, how we're going to tackle the challenge of reduced chemical availability. So it's not just, the markets won't let us use that anymore. It is about that international chemical manufacturing and registrations. We're just not going to get the chemicals registered in Australia for our crops anymore. So we're going to have to look for alternatives and use technology and be better at our management. We need to come back to focusing on efficiencies, and we don't know that we're going to do better unless we measure it first. So I strongly support these tools that both Scott and Angela have talked about today. And even if you use part of them in the next year or two, you're a step closer to getting your measurements done, and then you can work out where you want to improve from. I'm a huge advocate for reducing waste. Now, reducing waste doesn't need to be in its traditional sense, but I look at it as if we're using the same amount of inputs, but we're improving our yield and quality. So, improving our yield in the sense of quality and quantity, we can actually revert that into reduced carbon emissions. So we're reducing waste, the same amount of resources to produce more. And then I find this one hard because I can't see it personally, but there are people out there that have got this vision, and that's looking for those business opportunities, those different business relationships, ones that might be more varied from your standard inputs into supermarkets. I think if we get those measurements right, we could potentially look at alternative markets to that, or alternative ways of doing this business arrangement. And it might mean, hopefully, that we might even be able to grow less for more. And I think we all need to go back and question what it is that we're doing, how much we're producing, why we're producing it, and how we can get a better quality product that's closer to our consumers. So I'm hoping that we can really work closely together on this. It's going to be a team effort. Our project in the Yarra Valley is going to require farmers to sign up and work with Agribusiness Yarra Valley. So as a team, we're going to get together and work on our environmental plans. We at Agribusiness Yarra Valley are asking you to sign up with us. We'll help you start that self-assessment. So no one's going to see the results but you. We're hoping to get everyone to be working on an environmental plan, have the tools to monitor, have the confidence to review, and also have the confidence to bring your concerns or your observations to group discussions where we can bring in the expert help and we can solve this problem together. So creating a plan isn't as clear as I first thought. I've found that there's so many different types of businesses that have different reporting needs. So even being able to ask the question, what are my reporting needs? Some people going into a farmer's market might not need to do this for ESG reasons, but they might want to do this for marketing reasons. So it all depends on what your needs are. Big question at the moment, which I'll put into Scott and Angela to answer in a minute, is like, when does my supply chain need my sustainability report? What can I start doing now? And I think that the way Agribusiness Yarra Valley is going to do is actually promote just capturing that data. Let's just work out where we need to start. We don't need to compare the data yet. Let's just work out how we're going to capture it efficiently. Obviously, we're all going to have different things that we're going to improve on. So ask yourself that question, what can I improve on? And are there advantages for me doing this? Find those. So we know a little bit about those industry platforms out there. Open ears and mind to know of any more. Which one do you want to do? Well, that's entirely up to you. It's really going to be a system that suits your system. And there'll be a big question as well about doing your own environmental plan, even if you're not intending to do certification with these bodies that can provide you with these audits and the recognition of that further down the chain. I believe it is right for all farmers in the Yarra Valley to be working on some kind of environmental plan, and with the team around us, I think we can confidently do that. So I'll just check in that there's any more questions before people want to start the survey. Yes, with all good presentations and information comes a survey. There is a link in the chat. I think Kylie's going to pop that link in very soon, or you can use your QR code. If anyone would like to start their business in this project with Agribusiness Yarra Valley, you can reach out to Kylie or myself. I'd also advocate for you to check in with your industry body with regards to whether they are running an ESG or a sustainability program. So Angela pointed out the Sustainability One Australia do their own, Nursery Garden Industry have got their own, and for any beef and sheep or graziers here, Meat and Livestock Australia have got their own as well. So we are not the accreditors, we are not the certifiers, we are here to help, and we're here to help lead you into those right directions. I'll check my chat again to see if there's any questions there. All right, well, we'll lead with one of my questions. When do I need to be certified? I don't mind who answers this, Scott or Angela. Is there a simple answer?
Certified for what?
Certified for ESG.
ESG. So take a step back. We have no intention of making Hort ESG an audited process. And so Hort ESG is designed to recognise what you as a grower have in place already. So for things like, yes, there is a section about, do you have an environmental program? And so if you've got Freshcare environmental, then the system recognises that. We're not necessarily going to ask you any more information about what is in your Freshcare environmental certification, just that you've got it. So it very much about, do you have these things? And there's lots of programs across environmental, social, and governance. So that's where we're at this point in time. And we recognise that others might want a certifiable process. So say a bank, we will leave that certification process between the grower and the bank. We're not going to implement an overarching certification system.
It's interesting that you mentioned banks. I was speaking to NAB just yesterday.
Yep.
And they've got the ability to facilitate a connection with, can't remember the exact name of the organisation, but it was about the sustainability. It was called Clean Energy Finance Corporation.
Yep.
And interestingly, the NAB will acknowledge the savings that Clean Energy organisation is offering on loan rates, and they will pass that on to their NAB customer. So effectively, you could buy an electric ute and have that recognised, and that helps go towards your clean energy finance accreditation, and instantly got about 0.5% or something, or even up to 1% off your loan. So they're trying to make it happen. They really are. And this bank manager, by the way, encouraged all of you to have a conversation with your bank manager about your sustainable business. It might open some doors.
Yes, NAB is one of the founding partners with Clean Energy Finance.
Right.
Yep.
Angela, did you have a response about, when will I need to have my business certified?
Yeah, and I think it's likely when you want to make statements or claims around what you're doing, and that's what we see. Food from a food safety and quality perspective, that is not a statement you can make about your product. It is expected that every food product that hits the shelves is safe to consume. So if you're looking for marketing advantages, is where we really see, or the avoidance of greenwashing, the organic sector, they undertake organic certification in order to make those claims around the product. the same with Sustainable Wine Growing Australia and the Trust Mark. Freshcare Environmental had been adopted by many in the processing sector because it was a claim that they wanted to make on product packaging. Again, it becomes difficult in a Hort perspective when you have loose product on a shelf to make claims around the sustainability of those, loose fresh products. But yeah, I do think that if it's not necessarily a market-driven requirement, which we know will at some point likely eventuate to, it's if you want to make claims. If you're net zero, you need to be able to demonstrate how you're achieving that through some form of certification. So yeah.
Shout out, we do have a guest amongst us who is working very, very hard on that net zero front. So kudos to that guest that he's attending today.
Yeah.
A question to either of you: should I be collecting my data weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly? Anyone?
I think, growers collect data day to day, and that's so they can manage their operation and their inputs, etc. I guess in the context of going to like a Freshcare audit that's presented annually, we would expect growers to complete a Hort ESG report annually. But I will say that whilst growers collect day-to-day data, Hort ESG doesn't necessarily want that day-to-day data. It wants big data. And so our process going forward is getting growers to understand that, yes, you record, say, nutrient input data, and one audit process will want to see that. But Hort ESG and ESG and overall and emissions calculations will only want to see a piece of that data. So it's about analysing and extracting the bit of data that is wanted out of that data set.
I can see growers just pulling their hair out going, I know what my diesel expenses are for the year because my accountant did that, but I've got no idea how many litres I've used. What do I do? And so this is why I'm asking this question, is like, how do we best capture this data, and how frequently should we be catching up on it?
Yeah, so in the sense of like accounting software, we have identified that if you're using Xero is really good at pulling financial data but not use data. And so Xero have been made aware of this and are going through some changes. If you're using, what's the other? QuickBooks actually allows you to enter some data manually. It won't pull the use data, but there is a section that you can add that data.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you've got a bill or an invoice, I would recommend starting now to documenting the use data element into your financial record.
Yeah, it's probably a very easy adjustment we can all make.
Yeah.
Angela, did you have a response to that question?
Yeah. Oh, no, just as Scott said, it's as if when they're recording the data, record the data and probably review it annually and look at, that assessment at least annually, or review it at least annually, I would say.
Cool.
I think that the bit that I see around data is lots of growers record data for a single purpose. And that single purpose might be because they've got to go to audit.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few farmers around their audit time.
Trying to get growers to record that data, record it in a form that you can review it and look at it over time. and use it for multiple purposes.
Yeah. So get the accountant busy or the bookkeeper busy.
By the bookkeeper also. That's right. We see more and more digital input and automation that'll start to come through more and more. Hopefully in, say, maybe 10 years' time, a lot of that data is sort of more automatically captured.
Yeah. So Joe from AGYV has just written into the chat that in the on-farm emissions pilot, we made calculations based on total spend over the year and averaged it out. So that's just another tool that people might want to use for now.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up. We're a little bit over time, but I am absolutely overwhelmed with the quality of our information and presentation that we've been able to debunk some myths, open some doors, break this down and undo the complexity and some of these unknowns behind this. And I really do hope that we've created some useful insight on why we need to do this and definitely some direction so that businesses and organisations and farmers in the Yarra Valley can reach out to Kylie and I at Agribusiness Yarra Valley. We'll link you in. We'll respect your privacy and respect the rate at which you choose to move through this journey. So we're here to help and, yeah, keep in touch. So thanks again, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bronwyn.